All right, so this is a very cool find that I managed to stumble across thanks to Google Maps. I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation here, but this is the STP uh, Distelfink 2 German radar installation, or at least the remains of it. It's located about 6 kilometers from the coastline, south, obviously. Um, and then that's we're looking north right now, and it's right. It's really right in between Sword and Juno Beaches. And what this radar installation would have operated as is it operated as a early warning detection system. And this is the radar bunker itself. It would have had a big radar dish on top of it, and then that was the Wasserman radar system, and then the Germans would have stacked several Freya smaller radar dishes up on top of that, um, and that would have allowed them to detect aircraft up to something like 175 miles away, and they could do it with a full 360-degree position, and they'd be able to tell the altitude and the airspeed of the aircraft, which would give them a pretty good idea of what kind of aircraft were coming in. This is why with a lot of airborne operations, they'd have to come in really low, flying usually under 500 feet, because if planes flew under 500 feet, then they could avoid radar detection. So now you can see that's the radar bunker itself, and then over there is an anti-aircraft position. There's another anti-aircraft position, and there's a third anti-aircraft position. This one is actually 2 stories. This was the biggest one, but all 3 of the anti-aircraft positions here had L-40 series anti-aircraft guns and flak guns. And the reason for that is there's a couple things. They needed nice open space and open sky for the radars to operate properly. And by keeping them out in these open fields, it made it much harder for ground forces to attack and destroy them. The trade-off, of course, by putting them out in these giant open fields is that it made them very, very vulnerable to enemy aircraft attacks. Even if they had their early warning detection and they knew aircraft were coming in, obviously these were still some pretty easy targets, potentially, for Allied aircraft to hit. And so that's why any of these radar installations would have all these anti-aircraft positions around them. You basically just have the radar bunker itself, and then you just have all these anti-aircraft guns all around it just to support it and protect it. So I'm just going to go ahead and climb right up here into this one. This is one of the anti-aircraft positions, so you can kind of get an idea. They would have put the guns right around here, and I don't know exactly how many people would have been manning it, but you would have had multiple soldiers manning the weapon. They'd be visually spotting the aircraft. They'd be getting radio messages relayed to them from the radar bunker to tell them where the aircraft were coming, and then they would try to locate them visually. And then the anti-aircraft artillery itself, the guns took multiple people to operate, but they could swing them all around and cover a very wide range of fire up in the sky. But by the time the D-Day invasion occurred in 1944, the German Luftwaffe, the Air Force, was a shadow of its former self. Try not to lose my step here. And so the Allies really had total air superiority. It's not to say that they didn't have to deal with any Luftwaffe attacks. There were still dogfights, and there were still Luftwaffe missions, but overall, the Allies had complete air superiority even before they began the D-Day invasions. In fact, the only way that the D-Day invasions could occur, the only way that there was any possibility of a successful amphibious assault, is that the invading force needed to have total sea and air superiority. And this was just a known fact for amphibious assaults. Early on in the war, after Germany lost the Battle of Britain, which was basically an air war where they were trying to knock Britain out of the war, Hitler was also considering Operation Sea Lion, which would have been the overland invasion of the amphibious assault and overland invasion of Britain, where basically Germany would have done its own D-Day across the English Channel and done an amphibious assault into Britain. And they had the sea superiority thanks to Admiral Karl Dernitz's U-boat fleet at the time, just dominating the Atlantic. But they did not have the air superiority, and that's what they were trying to achieve in the Battle of Britain, and they failed miserably at that. And because of that, Hitler basically just had to scrap all of his plans for Operation Sea Lion and invading Britain, and he just kind of continued on. And a lot of his advisors argued that with Britain still in the war and Britain still launching substantial bombing raids over Germany, a lot of Hitler's advisors were warning him that that really represented a second front in the wars after he invaded Russia in 1941. And that was one of the things that was highlighted by the entire German military high command, including Hitler, was that they, before the outset of World War II, the German military all acknowledged that they needed to avoid a two-front war. They would not be able to sustain a two-front war. And after Hitler invaded Russia in Operation Barbarossa in the spring of 1941, that created the Eastern Front, and basically Hitler tried to argue his way that technically there was only one front. There wasn't a Western Front because there weren't any Allied boots on the ground in Western Europe, which was true, but Germany was taking substantial damage from both RAF fighter pilots as well as British Bomber Command under Bomber Harris. They say technically correct is the best kind of correct, and technically, I guess that wasn't a second front, but it didn't work out too well for Hitler. And then once the United States joined in, then the bombs really started to rain down onto Germany. Another interesting thing to note here, as I'm just walking around the site here, is you can see that there are looks like church spires. There's a church spire out there, and there's a second one out there. I don't know anything about those churches. I haven't been able to find anything on Google Maps about it, but I'd be willing to bet that they were around during the Nazi occupation of France. And if they were, then I would be willing to bet money that the Germans used those as sniper positions to provide overwatch over this entire area and to help protect this radar installation out here. And they also would have been spotting to sight in artillery as well. This is what remains of this radar site here, but it was actually much larger. There were like something like 8 installations just in this area, just like in this field alone. And they've all been gotten rid of, but they still maintain this site, and it's marked on Google Maps, even though this whole area is still actively used for farmland. There's tractors running around, and you can see that the ground is tilled and the grass is obviously planted and maintained, which is pretty interesting. And there's actually a radar installation, German radar installation, that's been turned into a museum, and I think that is, let's see if I can find it here. Oh, where'd it go? You can see the whole skyline is very very pretty right now. It's right around sunset here. Sun just starting to go down. Oh, okay, there's the radar installation. And that is unfortunately closed. They have it open seasonally, so it will open up again. I think their first visit is April 4th, when they have their first opening of the season again. I was there earlier, and it's all fenced off and it's closed off, but I don't like to break any laws or anything, but it's just a fence keeping me out from getting into that area. And I might go back there and see if I can find a little soft point to get in there and just kind of wander around in the whole open field area, because they have some really nicely preserved radar dishes and bunkers and other installations associated with all these radar operations, whereas this area out here is, you can see, it's just been completely destroyed, and I'm sure that was due not just to time. Obviously time has allowed for all the grass and stuff to grow on top of these things, but I'm sure these got utterly destroyed by Allied aircraft, probably pretty early on in the process of the D-Day invasions. When you consider that, again, this is just about 6 kilometers from the coastline, and Sword Beach is a little bit to the northeast, and Juno is a little bit to the northwest. So not very far at all from the coast, not very far at all from the beaches that were directly assaulted. And there you can see the tractors out doing his work. So this is another one of the anti-aircraft installations. And again, you can see that this is where they would have planted the guns, and you can see how, you know, you think about the AA guns that you see like in movies and documentaries and stuff, and just how much, you know, they're pointed up at the air and how they could just swing around and cover so much of the area. And you know, and this radar site had 3 of these, so you could see how you know, any aerial attacks against this radar site would have had a ton of anti-aircraft artillery going up against it. The planes would have undoubtedly had to deal with a lot of that. One of the ways that the Allies tried to handle that sometimes, and I don't know if this is the case here or not, but sometimes what they tried to do is they would just do what they called area bombing, which is basically just carpet bombing. They just identify an area with targets and they just drop a shitload of bombs all around that area. Most of them won't hit anything, or they might hit some other things and cause collateral damage. But if you carpet bomb enough, you'll definitely hit the area, the targets that you want to hit. And so sometimes the way that anti-aircraft was dealt with, and sites that were heavily protected by anti-aircraft like this were dealt with, is they just go ahead and just do high altitude area bombing to avoid the anti-aircraft guns and just obliterate all the targets that way. But again, I can't say that that's what they did in this particular case. But at any rate, this was a pretty cool find. A little bit of a walk, but beautiful area. And there you go. That's the STP Distelfink 2 German radar installation in Douvres, France, very close to Sword and Juno Beaches, and very close to Caen.